Matt and Mark Justice tackle today, bringing you all of the charts, the economic data, the macro picture, stocks in the news in a concise manner so you can start your day very well informed. Markets are showing clear preference this morning in your average stock versus your weighted stock, something that we made particular emphasis in the Trading Justice podcast released over the weekend. Go check out that in-depth analysis. But give us a snapshot, Matt. We're seeing that technical strength in your average stock RSP versus the S&P. Break it down for us.
Well, coming in on the cash open here on a Monday morning, we're seeing strength in everything in the marketplace. We're green across the board in the marketplace, from the indexes to the commodities to the currency. And when you do see that type of situation, gap up on the overnight action, everything gapping up, it's not going to stick. You're going to see some separation. Now, first and foremost, it's a positive data point coming off support. That's the number one thing that I'm looking at here today, is that 20 period moving average on the weekly, and that 540 level that we talked about all last week in terms of the support level holding. That is holding as of right now. But it's a start. It's not the ending of something. It's the beginning of something, and you want to see that certainly play through. But when you do have all the markets doing everything simultaneously at the exact same time, you know you're having a macro moment, and you're going to see a little bit of separation in that environment. So I want to take a look very quickly at the SPY, RSP, and the Qs for just a second. When you're looking at the SPY, a little bit of a choppy bullish retracement, obviously a little bit of a double top here against the 565. If 540 holds and we start working back up above 550, you're going to see this as a cup and handle type technical formation. That's going to be a really good look. If you do hold 540, get back up above 550, get above this cluster of moving averages that are obviously going to work as a resistance zone, then you will start to have a little bit more confidence on the spiders themselves. When you look at RSP here, RSP is just a bullish retracement with a sitting at a support level with a bullish harami. So we have a bullish trend with a bullish retracement with a bullish harami. What that tells me is, quite frankly, all you need to see here on RSP is simple confirmation. And what simple confirmation is just a close above the previous high. But I think you could easily just work off the 9 EMA here. So once again, RSP, which represents equal weighted, the entire marketplace, doesn't really give any weight to the tech areas of the market, for example, looking a little bit better on against the SPY. And then when you look at the Qs, you can see the Qs just a deeper retracement, giving up way too much support. And not only did it gap up with the marketplace, but after the market cash open occurred, you have actually seen relative underperformance in tech and outperformance in cyclical and defensive. And you can kind of see that when you're looking at the intraday chart here. On the left-hand side, you have RSP. Market gapped up on the overnight action, and now it's coming into that overhead resistance on the intraday chart. A really clean intraday resistance trend line, pretty clean bounce, and a very important test right against that 172. Here's the NASDAQ, gapped up with the market, immediately rejected, underperforming, could not even get up into the high there. And so when you're looking at the marketplace in general, and you see it from a heat map perspective, yep, we're still seeing a little bit of relative underperformance when it comes to the tech areas of the market. You can kind of see Apple down here today, Broadcom down, Micron down. You're having a little bit of a mixed market when it comes to technology itself. I think you can say a little bit of the same thing with comm services, with Google down 1%, Meta up 1%. But what you can't say that about is the cyclical and the defensive, which is all doing pretty good, including finance here. And so you're certainly seeing an oversized movement a little bit. Positive start for the bulls this week. But again, you're still seeing that same storyline play out. RSP cyclical defensive looking a little bit better. RSP, even on the intraday analysis, you're still seeing the same themes build out. So the strongest chart on the index coming into the week was RSP. That represents the cyclical and the defensive, the entire marketplace. It holds up better when the NASDAQ sells aggressively. That tells you something about the defensive and the cyclical side of the equation. Under pressure still, despite the gap up, is technology.
Yeah, and we are going to continue leaking in a catalyst-free week. Not a lot going on. We'll cover that in a second. The primary story is going to be a technical one. We will break down that ongoing technical saga here in the Tackle Today in our Traders Lounge in depth. Matt, nothing today. There was no economic data. There is no economic data tomorrow. We had a really busy week last week. Last week was a big macro week, lots of reports. What we have this week primarily revolves around inflationary data. The Fed meets next week. Mark the calendars. The 18th of September, Jerome Powell will be up there speaking. But this week, we got inflationary data. Used to be a huge deal. Takes on a lesser importance as the markets start to debate about, are we going to have a recession? Are we not? But still is a red, pay attention to event. What do you expect out of inflationary data from a market perspective this week?
You know, here's the thing. Obviously, we're in a macro moment. The entire markets are kind of trading similar. We can see differences over time, but they're all kind of trading on the same gasoline right now after that big macro week and labor week last week. This week, I don't see this week changing what the Fed does next week. And we're still in a sensitive environment, so you should see some volatility around these economic reports this week. But once again, I just don't feel this week the stage is set based on where the forecasting numbers are and what will happen from a year-over-year perspective. I don't see this changing the conversation this week. And I specifically don't see any data this week changing what the central bank's going to do next week.
Yeah, I know, and no narrative change. And that's one of the things we talk about in the podcast. There's going to be some data. There's going to be some algorithmic movement. Presidential debate is also on Tuesday night. So as you head into the market open on Wednesday, that's when, some of the political and the key economic report will be released. While we are having a little lull in the macro, we got a couple additions to the S&P 500. You were telling me about who did they open the door for, Matt?
Yeah, well, they opened the door to two good companies, and these companies have done really, really well over the course of the last year or so from an earnings perspective. One of my favorite companies, Palantir, love their CEO, love what they're doing from an AI perspective. They're a tier 2 company on the AI right now. They might get a bump up off of this inclusion into the S&P. And so the second stock story I have on my screen here is DELL and Palantir both get invited to the big dance. They get invited into the S&P 500. That news hit late Friday night. Obviously, we're seeing some outperformance here today. And once again, why is that so important? Number one, it not only signals that these companies are now part of those big market cap, companies that are included into the S&P 500, but it also shows you that these two companies specifically are AI names. They're not replacing AI names in the S&P 500. And so the S&P 500 gets a little bit more NASDAQ driven with the inclusions of DELL and Palantir, both really good names, and congratulations to both of those two companies, well deserved. The first stock story was ARM Holdings, and ARM's one of those obviously an AI watch list name as well. Probably the third or fourth most important semiconductor component when it comes to the AI marketplace. And they just had a big announcement here today where they are going to be supplying the some of the chips for the iPhone 16 during that next massive upgrade cycle coming out of Apple with their new Apple Intelligence phone coming out to the market later on this year. And so ARM got some pretty good news out of that. And then Oracle and Academy Sports, two of the most important companies reporting earnings this week. They are reporting tonight. That's Oracle. And in the morning, that's Academy Sports. And why that's important is obviously earnings are always important. But when you're looking at Academy Sports here, technically, you see this as a potential reversal above the 50-period moving average on the weekly chart. That's right around 57 on a positive handle. We would certainly wake up to Academy Sports. Oracle's a little bit of a different conversation. The all-time high price is right around 146. A break above that, you would certainly see it as a momentum scenario. And Oracle is the biggest tech name to report this week, so you might see a little bit of relative performance in the NASDAQ as well over the next 24 hours or so. When it comes to ARM, you're looking at ARM. Obviously, semiconductors have been under fire. All of them look fairly similar to this. Obviously, some a little bit better, some a little bit worse. But one of the biggest areas of concern over the last month in the market has been the semiconductors. And now you got ARM on a double test against the 200-day moving average with some positive news. Now, obviously, you got to see this play out from a reversal scenario, but I would keep an eye on ARM over the next 1 to 2 weeks to see what does transpire off that 200-day moving average. And then obviously when you're talking about the two companies that got invited to the big dance, DELL gapped up. Now you're kind of fighting that 200-day moving average itself on the daily chart. If you are looking at DELL, anything above that 50-period moving average on the daily chart, that would be a really good step in the right direction. And then on Palantir, just one of the better stocks in the market recently, and obviously gapping above an all-time high against that 32 handle. You look at this on a weekly chart, looks really, really, really good. You look at this on a monthly chart, kind of coming into that 35 handle. This 35, I said all-time high, excuse me, the all-time high is on the IPO at 45, but I would keep an eye on 35 here. 35 has that candlestick over here, right around that 35 level. You see good development there. You would like ARM on any development above 35. So keep an eye on that 35 handle, and that's all we got for stocks in the news here today.
Now, listen, markets, a lot of interesting price action, as you mentioned, everything up. Heck, even oil's up like 4 pennies. It's a bullish day when oil's up 4 pennies in the market. But start with the dollar, which is what makes it interesting to you, Matt, because if the dollar's up and everything's up, you're like, something's going to give.
Something's lying here. Something is fundamentally lying here.
Somebody's telling the truth and someone's lying.
Who's telling the truth? Is it RSP or the Qs? Well, as of right now, it's RSP telling the truth. Qs or maybe not.
I think they're both telling the truth.
But somebody's lying in the Qs versus the RSP, and somebody's lying in the dollar versus the commodities here today. It is a little bit of a weird pent-up bullish day coming off last week's sell-off. And so I do expect separation in the market, and I do expect separation in the commodities early this week, given the fact that the dollar's having a day here today. But you know what? Gold's holding up really good. It's actually up on the day really briefly. Copper's having a little bit of a day here today. Silver's trying to hold firm against 28. Bitcoin up here today slightly. And so you had a little bit of pent up bullishness coming into the market on this cash open. There's no doubt about that. But from the cash open on, we have seen separation. And I do think by the end of today, which areas of the market are kissing up against their high of the day, which areas of the market are kissing up against the low of the day, what areas of the commodity space are kissing up against the high of the day by the end of today versus what the dollar does. I think it's going to be a very big tell as we go through the rest of the week.
Yeah, listen, if you want more in-depth analysis, check out that Trading Justice podcast that we released yesterday. We titled A Bump in the Road. Check it out. And then sign up for that 15-day free trial at tackletrading.com. We're going to go get on the lounge here in a couple hours. Going to be there all throughout the week. A fantastic community. Come give us a shot.